So, welcome everybody. How are you today? Nice to see you. If you hear some noise in the background, I've got some furniture being moved around, and my blind dog, is very excited about what is happening, and so she might be barking in the background. So it'll eventually pass by, but I wanted to get started so that we can get you in and out, and you can learn some great stuff today. So, hi, my name is Cindy LeBlanc-Richard, and I am a registered holistic nutrition practitioner. And I am a registered natural therapist. So, I practice nutritional therapy. And I help women and men, mostly women, to balance their hormones and reduce inflammation and deal with the symptoms that come with chronic illness. And I teach people how to use food and lifestyle to reverse and manage those symptoms. And so we're going to be talking about heart disease today. And first, I just wanted to go over this little disclaimer here, okay? So I am not a licensed practitioner as a doctor, physician, dietitian, nurse, or a medical professional. This group or course is informational only, and anything that you learn here will be utilized at your own risk, is to be utilized and shared at your own risk. If you are gaining information for your own health and you have a medical condition of any kind, you should maintain treatment as prescribed by a physician, regardless of my recommendations or advice, or any use of suggested online guides, supplementation, websites, or products. In the case of medical diagnosis, it is vital to work with a physician to determine the best course of action and to never replace one treatment for another that goes against a physician's advice. None of the recommendations, suggestions, or written information provided in this group or within communication here are intended to replace medical advice of any kind. The information presented is never intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Full medical clearance from a licensed physician should be obtained before beginning or modifying any diet, exercise, or lifestyle program, and physicians should be informed of all food changes. This is my responsibility to let you know that. I am a naturopathic practitioner, and things are very strict now, especially on social media. So today we're going to be talking about heart disease and hopefully give you a better understanding of heart disease. Now, heart disease is the number one killer in North America for men and women, but it is definitely the number one killer of women. And I've lost many family members to heart disease. My mother had a quadruple bypass in her 60s. I lost my grandmother on my father's side to angina. I have many aunts and uncles who have cardiovascular disease and have had balloons, scopies, and the bypass surgeries, stents put in, all of the things, all of the surgeries that you hear about when we talk about heart disease. It is prevalent in my family. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart, literally. And I know that it's very prevalent in so many families. We talk about it all the time in my groups, and I also talk about it a lot with my private clients. And so this is a big focus. In fact, I just had a client come through my group program. She's still in my group program. She's been in my group program for 6 months now. And she actually had a stroke last summer. And through these changes, she's actually been able to reverse her heart disease and come off of some of her blood pressure medication. And so there's a lot that goes along with this. So there are 4 to 5 basic major things that we concentrate when we talk about heart disease and the root causes of heart disease. So the first one would be blood sugar. And the second is cholesterol. This is a big topic when we talk about heart disease. Triglycerides is another one. And then one that you might not hear of very often, but is probably the most important subject when we talk about heart disease is detoxification pathways and hormones. So this isn't something that you'll normally hear about when you go to your doctor and you talk to them about heart disease and cholesterol and triglycerides. It's not on their radar. It's not really what they focus on. But we'll get a little more into this at the end of this training, further into this training. So we'll start at the beginning, and that's with blood sugar. So when we eat food, and we have in North America, we have a very high carbohydrate diet, just based on convenience foods and recreational foods and processed foods, and that's just the American way of eating. So when we eat food in this form, we automatically have blood sugar. Okay, our body releases insulin, and insulin is basically the body's air traffic controller. It tells the body what to do with that new incoming burst of nutrients and blood sugar. So insulin is basically telling the body to burn this new glucose as energy. And that's what we use to just breathe and to live and to just everyday movements. And then, of course, if you're exercising or you're working or you're moving, you're going to be using energy in order to live. So insulin tells the body to use this glucose as energy. However, if we have more than we need, it will then instruct the body to store that glucose as fat. And that fat will get stored in our liver, in our muscles, and in our adipose tissue, which is the flabby flab. That's what we actually think of as fat, the adipose tissue. But in reality, we hold a lot of fat in our muscle and in our liver. And so it's our liver that we're going to be talking a lot more about today when it comes to producing triglycerides, etc. Now, when you look at a piece of meat, so just as an example of, you're like, what do you mean you have fat in your muscle? So just as an example, we'll think of just the food that we eat, okay, the meat that we eat, the animal products, so beef, pork, chicken, you name it, even fish, they have a layer of fat in them. And if you cut a piece of steak and you see the white parts of the steak, you're going to see that that is fat, right? So the same thing happens in our case. Now, in the North American way of eating, again, we eat a lot of processed carbohydrates, and those excess carbs get stored as fat. And then chronically high blood sugar makes our pancreas work overtime. So it is our pancreas that releases insulin. It is also our pancreas that releases glucagon, which is when our body has been told, okay, we don't have any more blood sugar left, she hasn't eaten in a while, we're going to use some of our stored fat. We're going to use some of that fat that's been stored in our liver, in our muscle tissue, and in our adipose tissue, right? So that's the pancreas. And after time, when we've overworked our pancreas, so if someone's eating nothing but complex, simple carbohydrates and lots of sugar and lots of pizza and lots of soda pop, alcohol, you name it, we kind of overwork our pancreas to the point where insulin doesn't get released as it should. And over time, the body even has an issue producing it because it's just been overtaxed. It just can't keep up. And that is the point when you hear people talk about insulin resistance, which is dangerous. And we then need perhaps assistance from insulin or some type of pill, right? The other thing that can happen is leptin resistance. Now, leptin is a hormone that helps us feel full. And when we overeat consistently, same with our pancreas working overtime, all of our hormones work in balance. What can also happen is we can produce a lot more ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone. And ghrelin is basically trumps leptin. Okay, they work in balance with each other, but ghrelin's kind of meaner. And when we're hungry, and we know that, anybody knows that who can be hangry, right? If you're someone who has a lot of sugar cravings and you get hangry, you'll know what I'm talking about. But we can also have leptin resistance. So we'll just eat and eat and eat, and we never feel full. We constantly are hungry. Nobody wants that. I certainly don't. And then you can run into a situation again where you might need insulin and you might become insulin dependent. And that is when we talk about type 2 diabetes. So this creates a lot of inflammation in the body. And with that inflammation, especially when it comes to blood sugar and constant high blood sugar in your bloodstream, this blood sugar is basically bouncing off of the blood vessel walls and your arterial walls, and it's causing tears. And when there's a tear in your blood vessels, your immune system automatically goes to repair that. And that's that repair. Like when we cut our skin, when we cut ourselves, what happens? We get a scab, right? We get a scar, a scab and a scar. Well, in the blood vessels, the same thing is happening. So it's kind of getting scarred over. And the more and more damage that happens, and the more scar tissue, the more buildup, the more repair that you're having from your immune system, that's causing a lot of inflammation. Okay, and then you can deal with blockages, etc. Also, chronically high blood pressure is the cause of obesity, right? Because we're storing all of that extra energy as fat. And again, as I described, it's contributing to heart disease and diabetes, type 2, fatty liver disease, which equals high triglycerides. So it is your liver that creates those lipids. So triglycerides are the lipids. And when you have too much of that, that is also floating around in your bloodstream. So it's like a double whammy. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. And then also, chronically high blood pressure contributes to Alzheimer's disease, which is now finally being recognized for what it is. It's type 3 diabetes, or insulin resistance of our brain. So there's a lot to say about chronically high blood sugar. So what about triglycerides and high cholesterol? So it is your liver that controls your cholesterol levels. Now, LDL, which is known as low density lipoprotein, is known as, it's kind of dubbed, it's been nicknamed the bad cholesterol. Now, we need all kinds of cholesterol in our body. Our body utilizes cholesterol. Cholesterol makes hormones. Cholesterol is what turns the sun rays on our skin into vitamin D. Cholesterol is absorbed about 40 to 60% from food. So we do still want to be aware of what we're eating for cholesterol. But there's a purpose to cholesterol. Cholesterol also turns into testosterone and estrogens. Okay, so it kind of makes sense that when we go through menopause as women and we lose estrogen, our cholesterol is higher because it is no longer converting into estradiol like it was when we were menstruating, etc. Okay, so there's a lot that goes with the cholesterol thing, but our body needs all of it. So LDL produced by the liver, and it's sent to the cells to use, literally use up, because it's the LDL that keeps the form of the cells, our cells, every cell in our body, right? We have billions of cells in our body. So it's what keeps the form of our cells, circular and fluid. Once the cell utilizes that cholesterol, that LDL cholesterol, it gets rid of it and accepts new cholesterol. Okay, but that old cholesterol should normally be taken out of the body. And what happens is it gets taken out by the HDL, which is known as high density lipoprotein, which has been nicknamed good cholesterol. Okay, now this good cholesterol, also created by the liver, is what carries the LDLs out from our bloodstream that are now floating around. So this good cholesterol comes in, scoops it out, and then takes it out of our body. So this is where we always have these conversations with our doctors, or we hear it on TV: good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, high HDL, low HDL, high LDL, all these conversations, all of these phrases. The reason why we want good HDL, more of it, is so that it does its job and it takes out that LDL, right? We don't want those LDLs just hanging around, getting released by our cells, floating around our bloodstream, and then sticking together and creating blood clots, right? Which leaves us susceptible to heart attacks and strokes. So high triglycerides from saturated fat, trans fats, as well as what we said, a high sugar diet, right? Chronically high blood sugar, as well, and high LDL cholesterol contributes to narrowing of the arteries, which can lead to cardiovascular disease, heart attack, and stroke. Okay, so you're basically getting it in two ways. You can have the inflammation from chronically high blood sugar pounding away at your blood vessels, and then you have triglycerides, which are from also a high carbohydrate diet, high processed foods, right? That are now, and bad oils, bad fats, saturated fats, that are now floating around, and they're just all sticking together and creating blockages. So eating for heart health. We want to eat high fiber foods, okay? High fiber foods. We want to avoid high starch foods and sugars. And we want to support liver function and detoxification. Okay, so when we think about fiber, everybody's like, oh, well, fiber, that's just carbohydrates. But there are different categories or families of carbohydrates. So there's fiber, which is the real vegetable, the real fruit. And then there's starches, which are your breads and your pastas. And these starches basically just break down into sugar. And then you've got just straight sugar, which are your cookies and your candies and your soda pops, alcohol, etc. So we want to focus on fiber, the real whole food, because it's fiber that helps us detoxify. So fiber are vegetables, beans and legumes, whole fruits, whole non-gluten grains, and nuts and seeds. Fiber is not absorbed or digested. It moves quickly through the digestive tract. It creates bulk, which aids in moving your stool. And this is the most important part. It moves out harmful carcinogens. Not only does it move out harmful carcinogens, but it actually detoxifies our hormones. So if we have excess estrogen from all of the hormones that are pumped into our food supply, right? And we're recirculating our own estrogen. We could be estrogen dominant. Well, it is our liver that detoxifies these things. It is our liver that detoxifies all of our toxins, carcinogens, etc. So when we're not getting enough fiber, we're not getting rid of the bad stuff. Fiber also helps to relieve constipation. So if you have a low fiber diet and you're constipated, basically the way you want to think about it is you are recycling your own waste, literally in your bloodstream. Not a cool thing to think about, really, when you put it that way, right? So lack of fiber can increase the risk of colon cancer. And it also contributes to all of these other things that I am explaining to you, especially about the hormones. And it slows sugar release, and that helps balance insulin and glucagon. So it helps balance our blood sugar. So we want to focus on veggies and fruit in their whole form, We want to eat the skin when it's, clean your vegetables and eat the skin. There's more fiber in the skin than anywhere. Okay. And then we want to focus on lean meats that haven't been filled with antibiotics and steroids. You want to try to find local providers. You want to know where your meat is coming from. And you want to only eat a moderate amount of meat. Okay. So 3 to 4 ounce servings per day is more than plenty for anyone. Okay. And then you can substitute the rest. You can fill up the rest of your plate with all of the fiber. And then we want to incorporate healthy fats. Well, wait a minute, Cindy. You're like, wait, doesn't fat make you fat? Well, if you're going to do nothing but eat fat all day, well, yes, of course it's going to make you fat, right? But sugar companies want you to believe that. This has been something that's been going on since the 1960s, when there was a connection made finally that diabetes was caused by sugar and, triglycerides. But then they were like, no, wait. Triglycerides are a fat. They must come from fat. And so they paid to have studies done to show that fat caused fat and triglycerides. And basically, fat is not healthy for us, but the right kind of fats are necessary for us. So the sugar companies have really taken a stand, and they market themselves in so many ways. And when the world decided that fat was the enemy, well, when you take fat out of every kind of food, it doesn't have a palatable taste anymore. It doesn't taste good. So they had to replace it with something to make it edible. So they replaced it with sugar and sugar substitutes. So in general, we want to avoid low-fat foods. Good normal foods are just fine, right? We want to avoid artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are actually even harsher on our bodies than real sugar. First of all, because they're chemically made, they're not natural to the body. And second of all, because these artificial sweeteners actually hijack our brain into wanting more sugar. So they create even more cravings. We also want to avoid sugar-free foods because we know that sugar-free foods have been pumped up with artificial sweeteners in order to give them taste. Sugar is actually more addictive than cocaine. And so it is a big issue for us in our North American society. Sugar addiction also has a symbiotic link to alcohol addiction because basically alcohol is sugar in its simplest form. Okay, so some healthy fats. When we talk about healthy fats, we see an avocado here. This is a perfect example of a healthy fat. This is a whole food. It has fiber, and you don't want to be eating 20 avocados a day because you're definitely going to get fat. But this is a good option when we talk about healthy fats. So healthy fats are necessary for the absorption of certain vitamins and minerals. They also fuel our mitochondria. So our mitochondria is the base of our cells, the most important part of our cells. It's what makes up our cells. And in order to have good mitochondria health, you need to be taking in some healthy fats. Healthy fats also help to reduce inflammation, lower bad cholesterol, believe it or not, and balance blood sugar levels. Yes, because fat is the only thing that doesn't trigger your body to create insulin. It's the only thing that doesn't spike your blood sugar or raise your blood sugar is fats, because there's nothing in it to raise, there's no sugar in it, right? But again, we don't want to be just sitting and eating fat all day, and we'll talk about that. So low fat usually equals added sugar and chemicals. And also, healthy fats are needed for detoxification. Now, here's when we get into the blood sugar versus fats, lipids, triglycerides, cholesterol. The double whammy is sweet fat. So that's when we're taking inflammatory oils and we're adding them to starches and sugars. So we know that our body breaks down starches and sugars, and it spikes our blood sugar. It causes insulin to be released. Lots of inflammation if you do it too much, right? If you're not in balance with your blood sugar. And then we're adding it to the fat part. So the inflammatory fats. So we're talking right here is a perfect example, fried dough with some extra sugar thrown on top. So these are cakes and cookies, anything that baked goods, anything that's made with shortening. Shortening is a nasty, nasty saturated fat. Vegetable oil, that kind of stuff. So anytime you're deep frying something that's been battered, right? So basically our American food system, everything is battered and fried. So that's the double whammy of heart disease. So fried foods, processed foods. So all of your crackers, minus the healthier ones that you can find at the wholesale whole food stores, right? The gluten-free grain crackers, etc. But processed foods in general, crackers, cheese curls, cheese puffs, cheesies, your corn chips, all of those things. These are starches that have now been fried with fat. So again, your double whammy, your sweet fat. It might be salty, but it's still a sweet fat because your body is breaking down those carbohydrates into sugar. Cheese. Okay, so cheese is milk, which is sugar, and fat. So it's all loaded into one. Then you've got cream sauces, which again is usually made from a roux, which is a starch, which is flour, and oil or butter mixed together, and then usually cream or milk put on top of that, which is lactose, which is another form of sugar and fat. And also loaded with lots of extra hormones, right? Because they're coming from a pregnant cow. So full of estrogens. So some unhealthy fats to be aware of are vegetable oils. So your plain old vegetable oil, something I don't have in my home anymore. You do want to be aware of this in restaurants. They still use vegetable oils all the time. Corn oil, canola oil, margarine. So margarine is literally one molecule away from plastic. It's completely synthetic, and just some oil mixed in basically. But definitely if you're going to go for a healthier choice, you would want to be going for butter, preferably a grass-fed butter, but butter over margarine always. Again, you want to be aware of these things in restaurant foods. Restaurants do not buy butter, they buy margarine because butter is very expensive in comparison to margarine. Vegetable oils are much more less expensive than your more healthier versions of oils. Plus, they don't reach a high smoke point, so they don't want to use them in their fryolators, right? So those are really, really highly processed oils. Processed foods, again, and then saturated animal fats. So we want to really be aware of how much red meat we're eating, where our meat is coming from. So our animals now are pumped. We were talking about blood sugar, insulin, how it all turns into fat if you have too much of it. So this is what they do to our animals. That's why these animals are in troughs. That's why they are sitting in head braces with their heads in front of just troughs full of grains. They're just force-fed grains all day when they're supposed to be eating a diet of grass. And what's happening is they're just fattening them up. They're getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. In fact, our food supply, our animal food supply now has about 35% more fat in their muscle tissue, which is what we eat, right, than it did 35, 40 years ago, because the practices are a lot different, right? So we want to look for grass-fed meats. We want to look for our local suppliers. If you live in an area where you can see those cows eating grass and you know that your farmer is feeding, their cows the right way, then you're ahead of the game. So it's really hard to find that in your conventional grocery stores these days. So some healthy fats are your avocado and avocado oil, coconut and coconut oil. Not a lot. I usually use it to bake with. I cook with avocado oil and coconut oil. Olive oil for dressing, because olive oil doesn't have a very high smoke point, so you don't really want to be sauteing with it or cooking with it. So I like to use olive oil as a dressing oil after the food is cooked. And then I look for higher smoke point oils to cook with, such as avocado oil. Now, coconut oil kind of has an aftertaste, but I do use it in my baking, because I don't mind that taste in my baked goods. Nuts, seeds, and their oils as well. So nuts are fat. There's a lot of confusion with that, but nuts and seeds are considered a fat, and they're considered a healthy fat. So macadamia nuts are like my favorite thing in the whole wide world, although they're extremely expensive. But Brazil nuts are very, very healthy for you. Almonds, cashews, pistachios, you name it. Chia seeds, sunflower seeds and nuts, all healthy fats. And then wild fish, right? So the smaller the fish, the oilier the fish, the better. So we've got salmon is a good one. Wild. Now we're talking about wild fish, not farmed fish. Farmed fish, we're looking at genetically modified. They're also fed grains, believe it or not. These fish are fed grains to fatten them up. So we're talking about wild caught fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, kippers, that type of stuff. Usually the stuff people don't really enjoy, but there are great ways and great recipes that you can find, especially with salmon. You can also find fish oils in a supplement, so it makes life a little easier. Again, and grass-fed meats. And grass-fed ghee. So ghee is basically butter that we have removed the dairy protein from it. So basically you just melt down. You can find videos just how to make ghee. You'll find a bunch of that on YouTube. And basically you are melting down the butter, preferably grass-fed butter, and you are skimming off the milk proteins, the dairy proteins, which are more inflammatory. And then you're creating your own anti-inflammatory oil. And it tastes just like butter, very tasty. So you're like, wait a minute, Cindy, what's all this fiber? What's all this fiber? What, it's not a low carbohydrate? Like, shouldn't I be low carbohydrate? What about keto? I was told I should do keto. So keto is just a nemesis in my world. It is a fad diet. It's been around forever. If you've heard of Atkins, if you've heard of South Beach, if you've heard of Duquesne, it's all keto. So keto is basically a state of medical emergency. It happens when your body is starved of macronutrients. So when you're not eating the colored vegetables, you're also not getting proper vitamins or minerals or the antioxidants. So when we talk about oxidation and aging and antioxidants, that's a big word. That's a big buzzword, right? Antioxidants. Well, all of your antioxidants come from your fruits and vegetables. Color, all those colorful things, all of that fiber. So fiber is your friend. Keto also contributes to gallstones. Okay, so does high cholesterol. So animal meat, we want to be eating it, like I said, 3 to 4 ounces, which is just the palm of your hand. Very easy. You don't need to weigh it. You don't need to look at anything. except your hand. And you can just compare that piece. So about 3 to 4 ounces, 3 to 4 times a day. If you're a man, I'd say 4. If you're a woman, I'd say 3, right? So you also want to keep in mind your portion sizes. Osteoporosis. Okay, because we are starving our body of nutrients like calcium and magnesium and potassium. When you're doing nothing but eating animal foods, right, you're not getting the proper nutrients. And when your body doesn't have enough calcium, guess where it takes it? It takes it from your bones because it needs it to actually live and function. So if you don't have enough nutrients, your body is going to steal them from other places. And then you're going to become even more nutrient deficient. And pancreatitis. So when the body is producing too much glucagon and it's not creating any insulin, right? We're still out of balance. So we are taxing the pancreas. And liver damage. So I have a few clients that have liver damage because of doing keto on a regular basis. One is well over 40 and one happens to be quite young. I think she's like 27, 28 years old now. So it can happen at any time. No one is immune. So we want to think color. These are our antioxidants. These are our nutrients. This is our fiber. This is what is going to pull carcinogens and hormones and cholesterol and all of these things out of our body. And it's going to help our liver, right? We want to love our liver. We also want to know our numbers. So your A1C is a glycosated hemoglobin test. This is an average test, about 2 to 3 months, and it shows the average of your blood sugar. And we want this to be under 6.5. Now, I was pre-diabetic. Anything over 6.5 is considered pre-diabetic. I was pre-diabetic, but within a year of finding out, I changed the way I was eating. I was much more strict with what I was doing. And within the year's blood test, I was able to bring it down from 6.5 to 5.1. We also have the same woman who had the stroke last summer. She was insulin dependent, and her A1C was 10 and 11, and she brought that down to 6.5. So she's not even considered pre-diabetic anymore. Well, she's pre-diabetic, right? She's right there on the line, but she's kicking butt. And they've even taken her off of they've lowered her insulin and taken her off of her blood pressure medication. So it's amazing, absolutely amazing. So some of your other numbers, of course, are your cholesterol. Your total cholesterol should be less than 200. Your LDL, and remember that's what we call the bad cholesterol, should be less than 100. And your HDL should be over 60. Remember, we want more of the HDL than the LDL because it's the HDL that comes in and scoops up the stuff that's left over and been used up. We don't want it floating around in our bloodstream. So it comes around and scoops it up and excretes it out of the body, right? So we can do that by increasing our fish oils and our healthy oils and getting rid of all of the unhealthy oils, staying away from the sweet fats and incorporating more fiber, right? And eating a whole foods diet with loads of fiber, lean meats, quality lean meats, and healthy fats. And then your triglycerides, we want those to be less than 150. But remember, triglycerides are not necessarily from fat. They can be if you're eating a very high red meat diet, lots of red meat, etc. Eating a lot of saturated fats, it's possible. But most of the time, the real trigger for the triglycerides is sugar. It's sugar and processed carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates. So we want to be aware of that. When we think of carbohydrates, we want them to have color. So if this has been resonating with you and you're like, oh, I really need to make some changes, this is what I teach. Okay, so I do nutritional therapy. I do it on a one-on-one basis. I also have a group program that runs 3 times a year. We're just coming to the end of our summer program, and we'll be starting up again in September. The one-on-one personal naturopathic consult, I call it a lifestyle detour consultation, because that's basically what we're doing. We're turning around our lifestyle habits. There's a lot to it. So I find that when it comes to making changes, it's not as simple as just a one hour class. It definitely takes some commitment. It takes some education, preparation, and lots of action and lots of practice. So the one-on-one personalized naturopathic consult is $165. We do a intake form at the beginning. We can do it all online. And once I go through that, we meet one-on-one together and we go through your stuff, your personal stuff. It's very personalized. And then we talk about programs and coaching after that. Because, like I said, you can't really make changes in an hour. It just doesn't happen. Some of my clients have been with me for years. It's a consistent lifestyle practice. And so I like to be able to give you the tools, the support, and the coaching to be able to make it happen for you, because everyone's situation is very different and food is very personal. So I offer 2 different programs. They're both 90-day programs. The first one is the one-on-one. So it's the personalized program, one-on-one. It's called the 90-Day Lifestyle Detour Program. It includes 6 one-hour consultations, unlimited email access to me. So basically, we're on Messenger. You have questions, I'm there. I'm there to coach you and be there for you no matter what's going on. And this also includes meal plans and unlimited resources. So that's $897. But those private sessions are actually reimbursable by insurance under your naturopathic coverage. So if you're someone who has naturopathic coverage, you get a lot of that back. I also have a second program that is becoming more and more popular. I've been running it for a year now since COVID happened and I had to go online with everything. And I find that this is just an amazing way to go through this journey. And this is my group program. It's called the 12-Week Hormonal Reset and Slim Down Group Challenge. I call it a challenge because we jump right in, but you're going to learn the same information as you would on a one-on-one basis, but you'll be in a group of women, very similar, like-minded women who are dealing with the same issues and same struggles. And so I just adore this group. The women in this group are just powerhouses, and it's just really wonderful. I've just seen some amazing transformations, and we have a lot of things that go with it. So again, you also have the personalized intake assessment and consultation, which is reimbursable from your health insurance. We can do this at any time during the program, before or during. Some people like to do it during or even towards the end, once they've discovered what's really involved with everything. And then it includes weekly live coaching sessions where we get together on Zoom and we do trainings and we talk about issues, and it's really therapeutic, which is why I call it nutritional therapy, because it really truly is about changing habits, right? We don't just inherit our genetics and our predispositions. Most of all, we inherit our habits and our beliefs. And so that is really what dictates the manifestation of predispositions. If you can change your habits and your beliefs, you can likely change the manifestation of your illness. And I see it every day. It's true. Also, the Members Vault with recorded trainings, tons of trainings throughout the year in there. Our private Facebook group, that's where we share all the goings on, and we share recipes, and I share all of my favorite resources when it comes to recipes, and it gives you an opportunity to find where these recipes are. you know, not having to stick to a meal plan and look through a book every day. We're all on social media, we're all scrolling. So all of these recipes are accessible at your fingertips, Pinterest, you name it. You can find great recipes, tons and tons and tons of recipes. We also do more morning movements live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We do a Pilates yoga practice, which has become really one of my favorite parts of this group. Not everybody partakes into this, but I find that it's sad that they don't, because safe movement is a big part of overall health, especially when it comes to heart health. And then it's full of education, fun. We laugh, support, accountability, and membership. And that is only $597. And again, you can get a portion of that back from your naturopathic coverage if you have it. So this group will be starting again in September. I don't have an exact date, but if you follow the page, Move Food Therapy, or if you go onto my website, www.thehippiekitchen.com, you can join the mailing list, and I share all of the upcoming trainings and all of the goings on. I share with all of my lists and on my page. So I hope you found this information incredibly helpful and that it resonated with you. And so I would like to open up for questions, but we don't have many people here today. And I am about to say goodbye unless someone does have questions. And I believe, Francine, that you're here. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. But there is no one speed in which to proceed with one's healing. There is no one path that serves everyone all of the time, and not every answer is everyone's answer. So when it comes to nutritional therapy, everyone is different. Food is very, very personal. Everybody really they have health goals, but they're not really sure how to reach them. And so that is my passion. That is what I do. That is my story. My story is really long. If you want to learn more about that, you can also find that on my About page, my bio page on my website. So I hope you enjoyed this training, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to hear from you at some point soon. So I want to say thank you for being here. And if you're catching this on a replay, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or you can reach me by email at thehippiekitchen@gmail.com. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Does anybody have any questions? No, everybody's good? All right. Well, thank you so much. And
Yep.
yes? Oh, okay. All right. Well, have a great weekend.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.